Recess. It's recess time. As of Friday, the U.S. House of Representatives is officially on recess, and they are on recess for the rest of August. And while that sounds like an awesome summer vacation, what it means for House members is, as tradition dictates, they go home to their districts and they meet with their constituents about all the hot issues on the political stove right now. Hottest among them, of course, is health care reform. Now, whatever the political issues are, this recess happens every year, and the meetings with constituents thing happens every year. What's different about this year? Well, I'll let you judge for yourself. To my mind, this is not your typical meeting with constituents.
Government agency has the government taken over, and it's run beautifully and made money. Sir, we are No, please tell me. Please tell me. That would be a relevant question. I asked you a question. Please answer it.
Okay, stop talking. I'd be happy to answer. The overwhelming weight of the scientific evidence is that global warming is real. No one is talking about the government taking over health.
Oh, no.
Democratic Congressman Tim Bishop of New York being shouted down and overwhelmed by a belligerent, organized crowd of hecklers that had no interest in letting him get a word out as he attempted to answer their questions. This could just be a one-off thing. This could just be a one-off experience of badly behaved constituents somewhere mad at their congressman about something or other. Turns out this was not at all a one-off bad meeting. It turns out this is happening around the country. Here's Texas Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett. Yes, there are still elected Democrats in Texas. Here's Congressman Doggett facing a similar scene at a town hall event over the weekend. This one took place at a grocery store in Austin. What you may or may not be able to make out there is the crowd yelling, "Just say no, just say no." They're holding signs depicting Congressman Doggett as the devil. And there's one sign that reads, "No government counselor in my home." The U.S. Senate doesn't take its recess for another week. But Democratic Senator Arlen Specter got a taste of what his time off might be like at recess during a town hall event that he held in Philly yesterday with Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius.
I am not a member of Congress, have never been. That's just a fact. I'm just telling you, my observation is I have never seen members of Congress work harder on it. It is unacceptable to me for somebody to...
Reform our healthcare system and stop this system that we have now where insurance companies basically get to manage you.
We actually had to narrow down the pile of footage that we had like this from just the last few days in order to figure out what to show in the time that we had available on the show. We could have spent the entire hour just showing tape like this. But the more time you spend looking into this seemingly organic outrage at these town hall meetings, the more clear it is that this isn't organic at all. This is orchestrated outrage. There is a script for this stuff that was written before these events happened and that appears to be instructions to people to shut down these efforts at civic discourse. The website Think Progress obtained a leaked memo from a group that calls itself Right Principles. The 3-page memo details how protesters should behave at town hall events. Under the heading Inside the Hall, it says, quote, "You need to rock the boat early in the representative's presentation. Watch for an opportunity to yell out and challenge the representative's statements early. If he blames Bush for something or offers other excuses, call him on it, yell back, and have someone else follow up with a shout out. The goal is to rattle him." Also, quote, "When the formal Q&A session begins, get all your hands up and keep them up. The balance of the group should applaud when the question is asked, further putting the representative on the defensive." Who's giving these rent-a-mob instructions like this? Well, that memo was written by a man named Bob McGuffey. Bob McGuffey is affiliated with an organization called FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks is a Washington, D.C. lobbying firm run by former Republican Majority Leader Dick Armey. Corporate lobbyists are organizing far-right hooligan tactics to disrupt civic meetings about health care reform. This is the organized use of intimidation as a political tool in the United States. And I don't mean intimidation euphemistically. I mean literal intimidation. New York Congressman Tim Bishop, who we showed you earlier, he ended up having to be escorted to his car by 5 police officers for his own safety after his town hall event was over. And this type of harassment is not just reserved for elected officials. Check out what happened at a Syracuse, New York town hall meeting when a man who supports a single-payer health care system stood up at one of these events to ask why his congressman wasn't supporting single-payer.
It's cheaper. It would cover everyone. We have 45 million people who are uninsured. Congressman Fay, 90 people who have signed on in the United States Congress. 11 of you going
to you. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
Time out for action. Why won't you co-sponsor HR 676 and support single-payer universal health care?
This type of tactic, this type of intimidation is a deliberate choice, and it appears to be stoked and organized by corporate lobbyists. And it is not something that is happening in a vacuum. Let me give you another example of what's being passed off as politics right now by lobbying interests on the political right. When the climate change bill came before the House last month, a Democratic congressman named Tom Perello of Virginia received a letter purportedly from a nonprofit Hispanic group in his district, and the letter urged him to oppose the cap-and-trade legislation. He received similar letters from what were purportedly his local branches of the NAACP. Only these letters weren't actually from that Hispanic group in his district or the NAACP. A Republican lobbying firm in Washington has admitted to impersonating those local nonprofits and sending Congressman Perello fake letters to get him to oppose the climate change legislation. Congress is now investigating this incident. This is a lobbying firm. This is the establishment. This isn't a lone nut job passing himself off as a group he doesn't belong to. This is well-paid lobbyists doing this as a strategy. It's the same thing with the deathers, the scare-your-grandmother myth that the whole point of health care reform is secretly to kill old people. This patently false rumor about health care reform, as we've talked about earlier on this show, was started by a woman who sits on the board of directors of one of the nation's biggest medical device companies. Everybody says, oh, politics ain't beanbag, right? Obviously, this is not beanbag. But this isn't hardball either. No offense to Chris. This just isn't even politics. This is orchestrated mob mentality intimidation. This is called hooliganism.